Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityormamritam Gamaya Aviravirmaedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tena Mam Pahi Nityam Tena Mam Pahi Nityam. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Reach us through and through ourself, O Lord, and protect us evermore from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. Om Vishnur Va Tripurantako Bhavatu Va Brahma Surendro Dhava Bhanur Va Shashalakshanota Bhagavan Buddhota Siddhota Rava Ragadvesha Visharti Moharahita Sattvanukampodhyato Yasarvai Saha Samskrito Gunaganais Tasmai Namah Sarvada. The Supreme Reality and its messengers are known by various names in various traditions. But as for me, I offer my worship always to the one going by any name and belonging to any tradition, who is free from attachment and hatred, free from worldliness and delusion, who is filled with compassion towards all living beings, and who is possessed of all noble virtues. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So good morning, everyone. This morning the topic is the path of action, that is Karma Yoga, or everyday yoga. So let me, I usually start by explaining my titles, so I'll start by explaining this title. The path of action, of course, is obvious, Karma Yoga, that you all know of Karma Yoga, one of Swami Vivekananda's 4 yogas, and everyday yoga, because Karma Yoga deals with our everyday life. And Bhakti Yoga deals with our relationship to God, a love for God, remembering God, etc. And most of us in the beginning and for a long time think of God only once in a while. And so it's something that we do when we're thinking about God, or when we remember to think about God. But otherwise, we're not doing Bhakti Yoga. And Jnana Yoga, the path of self-inquiry, the path of knowledge, when we can remember to identify with the self and to discriminate between the real and the unreal, and between the self and the not self, then we're practicing Jnana Yoga. But most of the time, for a long time, we're not able to do that. And Raja Yoga, when we're actively controlling the mind, then we're practicing Raja Yoga, working with the mind. But that also, we don't spend our whole day or day after day doing that normally, until we have become advanced yogis. But Karma Yoga deals with action, and that's where we find ourselves most of the time. Most people have to support themselves, they have to work. Even if you join the Ramakrishna Mission, even other orders, you'll find yourself doing a lot of work. It's not that by becoming a sadhu you get out of work. That was the old idea of sannyasa. But that Swami Vivekananda found that most people who took to sannyasa were not ready for that. And so once when he was on his way to Darjeeling, he saw a sadhu by the roadside meditating, and in his meditation he was asleep. And so Swamiji said, hook him up to the plow and let him do some work. And so work is a field where we find ourselves most of the time, especially if we understand work in a comprehensive way, as Sri Krishna explains it in the Gita, where nahi kaschik kshano api jatutishtatya karmakrit. In the third chapter, near the beginning, Sri Krishna says that no one can remain without action even for a moment. If you say, oh, Swami, I can do that. I just sit on the couch and say, okay, I'm not going to do anything today. Today is my day off. I'm just going to relax. Well, that also is work. You also have made the determination that I'm just going to sit here and do nothing. And if you really sit there and do nothing, that takes a tremendous amount of work, because you sit there for a few minutes and you think, gee, some chips would be really nice right now, or, or let me see what's on the television, or let me flip through the magazine, or whatever. So to really do nothing, you have to really be quite a yogi to do nothing. So Sri Krishna says that no one can remain without action even for a moment. Niyatam kuru karmatvam karma jyayo hyakarmanaha. Being self-controlled, work all of the time, because work is better than inactivity. Sharira yatra pichate na prasidhyera karmanaha. Even the maintenance of your body is not possible without work. How much work we spend every day just maintaining the body. And as we get older, we find that more and more of our time is spent maintaining the body, just keeping it going. So even the maintenance of the body is not possible without work. And so, karma yoga is the path of action, and that's a path where we need to. Bharati, can you hold the door? Thanks. So the path of action is a path where we learn to act in a way that is spiritually beneficial. And without that, we find that we can't practice spirituality much of the day. And so that's why the title, the path of everyday yoga, because we're always engaged in action of some sort. Even when we're practicing the other yogas, jnana yoga, karma yoga, raja yoga, bhakti yoga and karma yoga, raja yoga, then we're also acting. And so that's why in our spiritual life we have to learn to practice the attitude of karma yoga even in our other spiritual practice. So even when we are meditating and we're thinking, am I getting somewhere? Am I getting somewhere? I feel the same as I was, but my mind is wandering. What's going wrong? And we start feeling dejected. No, even that we have to do with the spirit of karma yoga. That is, non-attachment to the fruits of my action. Okay, I sat for an hour today, good. But the whole time my mind was wandering. Okay, well, I'm not doing it for the fruits of the action. I'm trying to do my best, but the fruits of the action I surrender. Even my meditation. I'm doing puja and my mind is wandering. Well, that also, I surrender the fruits of my worship to God. I don't attach myself to them. I don't try to insist on a particular outcome. I say that, well, if I can't meditate the way I want to meditate, then I'm just going to give up the whole thing. Or if my mind wanders during worship, then why should I do it? Just give up the whole thing. No, even in the midst of actions like meditation, worship, study, etc., there also we have to practice non-attachment to the fruits of action, which means karma yoga. So karma yoga is the path of everyday yoga. And that's why Swami Vivekananda said that for members of the order, and he meant it for all of his followers, devotees as well, that you can follow any yoga that you like, bhakti, raja, jnana, etc., or any combination of the yogas, but everyone must follow some karma yoga. So part of it was for this reason, because if we don't practice karma yoga, we can't even practice the other yogas properly, because we'll be attached to the fruits of our action. Again, where karma yoga can be defined as non-attachment to the fruits of action. That's the essence of karma yoga. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, the most famous verse in the Gita perhaps, that yours is the right to the work, not to the fruits of the action. One of the most difficult things to understand in yoga, but perhaps the most famous verse in the Gita. In fact, I have a small postage stamp that great Swami gave to me many years ago when I was living at Mayavati. That would have been 1979. It was a Gita commemoration stamp printed in India. It's a beautiful stamp, a red, carmine red background with gold design, lettering and design. And it shows on the stamp the Sri Krishna and Arjuna in the chariot. And then it has written on there in Devanagari, Karmanyevadhikaraste, yours is the right to work alone. And so again, that is probably the most famous verse in the Gita, the most often quoted. And that's the essence of karma yoga. So, karma yoga or everyday yoga. And the great exponents of karma yoga, the greatest exponents of karma yoga, I would say, are Sri Krishna in the Gita. In fact, so much emphasis he puts on karma yoga in the Gita that Tilak, Lokamanya Tilak, said that the essence of the Gita is karma yoga. Now that many people, myself included, or he said, didn't say the essence of the Gita, he said, but the whole purpose of the Gita was karma yoga. Well, no, that I wouldn't go that far, because he teaches all of the yogas, and he teaches a synthesis of spiritual ideas and of spiritual paths. But he certainly gave extraordinary emphasis to karma yoga. The strange thing is that here Sri Krishna, who is worshipped all over India, and the Gita is one of the most read scriptures in India, along with the Ramayana and a few other works, but one of the most often read, is the most translated work of all of the Indian literary works. And yet Sri Krishna's message of karma yoga was largely forgotten. Karma yoga came to be seen as a path of doing your scripturally enjoined actions in a detached way, so that you could purify the mind, so that then you could leave karma yoga and go to practice bhakti yoga or jnana yoga. The great acharyas, Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, they all said that karma yoga was preliminary in order to purify the mind. So you do scripturally enjoined actions, that is your yajnas and your caste duty and other things, and then the mind is purified if you do it in a detached way, and then you're fit to practice other yogas, and then you leave karma yoga behind. So that was the idea promoted about karma yoga in Vedanta for many, many centuries. But that's not what Sri Krishna says. He teaches karma yoga as a path that leads to illumination. And so Sri Krishna himself gave great emphasis to it. Another difference is that Sri Krishna taught action as all action, as a way to liberation. And that you find in the Mahabharata in general. Those scholars who say that the Gita probably does not belong to the Mahabharata haven't really looked at the Mahabharata well, because the ideas taught in the Gita are taught throughout the Mahabharata. The ideas are consistent with the rest of the Mahabharata. And so in the Mahabharata you find the Vyadhi Gita, the Gita of the butcher. And the idea is taught in that passage in that section of the Mahabharata, that this woman attained to illumination just by taking care of her household duties in a non-attached way. And the butcher attained to illumination just by carrying on his work in a detached way. And so the idea was throughout the Mahabharata that through non-attached action, the mind could be purified to the extent, not just so that one could practice another yoga, but so purified that the mind itself would merge in the truth. And so Sri Krishna was a great exponent of Karma Yoga. There were many others, but he was the greatest. And then Swami Vivekananda gave great emphasis and revived the idea of Karma Yoga as Sri Krishna had taught it, though he added his own new emphasis even there, as I'll say towards the end of the talk today. And so Swamiji and Sri Krishna stand historically as the two great proponents of Karma Yoga as a path and as a universal path. Swami Vivekananda said that I have carved out a new path so that boys and girls can, through action, learn the way to come to the highest truth. And but also Sri Ramakrishna, we don't think of Sri Ramakrishna as an exponent of Karma Yoga, because in fact he even said Karma Yoga is very difficult. But you have to, he said, it's not for the modern age, but you have to look at what he meant by Karma Yoga. He meant by Karma Yoga the traditional idea of Karma Yoga, which meant doing Vedic rites. Doing Vedic rites, but not doing it with the idea of going to heaven. Well, how many people are doing Vedic rites nowadays? And most don't even do Sandhya Vandana and repetition of the Gayatri, what to speak of maintaining the household fire and making offerings into the fire and all of that. And so Sri Ramakrishna said that Karma Yoga is not for the modern age, but his Karma Yoga, as he was speaking of it, was that, the traditional idea of doing Vedic duties, Vedically prescribed, enjoined duties, in a detached spirit. But you find that Sri Ramakrishna himself was an exemplar of Karma Yoga, as Swamiji himself taught Karma Yoga. Again, there's not the conflict between Sri Ramakrishna and Swamiji. If you look not just at their words, but at their lives as well, and look at a comprehensive view of the people and their lives. So there you see that Sri Ramakrishna gave his life for the welfare of others. He gave his life for the welfare of others. Sri Krishna says in the third chapter, let's see, what is that, if I can remember that. Mam karmani limpanti. Gosh, I can't remember it now. I know it well. But in the third chapter, Sri Krishna says something to the effect that I have nothing to gain by action, O Arjuna. I have nothing to gain by action, and I have nothing to lose. But I work for the welfare of the world. If I don't work unceasingly, then the rest of the world will follow the path that I have laid out. And so I work for the welfare of all. And so the idea is that Sri Krishna is saying that he has no need to do anything. Sri Ramakrishna also had no need to do anything. And yet he worked tirelessly. Why? He had no need for himself. He was free. He was liberated. He worked only for the welfare of others. That is, he worked only out of a spirit of unselfishness, a spirit of detachment. So that even when he was suffering from cancer of the throat, an extremely painful disease, which in those days they didn't have the methods of controlling pain that we have today. And so extraordinarily painful. And I was told not to speak because speaking would aggravate the sore in his throat. And yet when people would come to him, he would forget everything and speak to them and give them instruction. And when people would try to hold others back so that they couldn't go to him, so that Sri Ramakrishna wouldn't speak and aggravate his throat, if he found out about it, he said, no, this body has come for that purpose. You let them come to me. Even on his last day, when he could hardly gasp out a breath, he taught others. And so Sri Ramakrishna was a great exemplar of Karma Yoga, work done for the welfare of others. And also he was a great exemplar of service, that is, the occasions when he, for instance, told Mathur Babu that I won't continue on the pilgrimage to Varanasi unless you serve these villagers who are suffering here, unless you feed them and get oil to put on their head to cool their heads from the hot sun, etc. And so Sri Ramakrishna was a great exponent of Karma Yoga, though he didn't speak about it. There's a point to that also. Sri Ramakrishna said, in an apparent contradiction to Swami Vivekananda, he said, if God comes to you, will you ask him to build hospitals? No. You seek God for God's sake. And here Swamiji is telling people to serve others, to work for the welfare of others, to give your life for the welfare of others. And one who dies in the service of others will immediately be liberated, Swamiji says. A new idea of martyrdom, a higher idea of martyrdom, not just giving your life for the faith or something, but if your life goes in the service of others, you will be liberated. So Sri Ramakrishna is saying that, well, if God comes to you, are you going to ask him to build hospitals? No, that's not the purpose of life. The only purpose of life is to realize God. Well, Swamiji didn't disagree with that also. Swamiji supported that idea. But he saw the service of others as a way to the realization of God. Swamiji says in one place, it's a very strange statement, and therefore one that many of our people avoid because it's too difficult to deal with. He says, Sister Nivedita reports him saying that Sri Ramakrishna didn't himself understand the meaning of his life, but I saw the meaning of it and drew it out. So Swamiji is saying there that Sri Ramakrishna, he said, Sri Ramakrishna was content to lead that wonderful life, but I saw the meaning within it. And that was one of the reasons why Sri Ramakrishna brought Swamiji. If Sri Ramakrishna could have done everything himself, there was no need for Swamiji. There was no need for Holy Mother. No need for all of his other disciples. He would have done everything. But there were things that Swamiji could do, things that Holy Mother could do, things the other disciples could do that Sri Ramakrishna himself couldn't do. Because Sri Ramakrishna's mind was always absorbed in the divine. But Swamiji, because of his education, because of his brilliant mind, and because of his ability to analyze the human situation in depth, the economic situation, the political situation, the historical situation, etc., he could see the need of the age, and he could apply the ideas, the principles that Sri Ramakrishna had lived in a way that was applicable to ordinary people like us. And so Swamiji read the meaning of Sri Ramakrishna's life and taught in a way that those principles. And so you see this idea of karma yoga. The Sri Ramakrishna saying that karma yoga is not for this age, and Swamiji saying that karma yoga is for this age, where they were speaking of two different things. And Swamiji's saying that was based on what he had seen in Sri Ramakrishna himself. And so it was not contradictory to Sri Ramakrishna. Only the words are contradictory because they're pointing at two different things. And of course, Holy Mother was the great exemplar of karma yoga as well. Holy Mother, who lived in the family, who lived with all of the difficulties of the family, lived with extremely difficult relatives who were always causing her problems. And yet she showed how one could live in the midst of that situation with an enlightened mind. One could live a life absorbed in the divine, even in the midst of all of those problems. She was always working, always engaged in work, and yet her mind was always absorbed in the highest. And so the great exponents of karma yoga, Sri Krishna historically, and then Swamiji, but also we have to include Sri Ramakrishna and the Holy Mother as exemplars of karma yoga as well. And as I said, there are other places also. I'll just mention one and then go on to the heart of the topic. The Yoga Vashishta, which is like a Purana for jnanis, for people on the path of knowledge. It's full of wonderful stories. The Yoga Vashishta, the Vashishta Ramayana it's also called. And in there it says, said, when Vashishta the sage is asked by Rama whether one should follow the path of action or follow the path of action, the path of knowledge or the path of action. And Vashishta says that one must follow both together, action and knowledge, like the two wings of a bird, that you have to have both. Again, in recognition of the fact that we spend our lives in action, that we spend our lives active in the family, at work, at play. In fact, Texas is a good place to see that play for most people is work, because here football is not a sport, it's not a game, it's life and death. It's a life and death matter, football in Texas, even starting from elementary school. And so even play also is a place for karma yoga. Karma yoga, and there's a program I used to listen to in the car. I don't have access to it now. But I used to hear it when I was at Ridgely Manor. When I'd be driving at certain times of the day, there was a program on NPR. I think it's still there, but I just don't get it here in Houston, called It's Only a Game. And there was a program about sports, and I don't have that much interest in sports now. I did as a kid, but I don't now. But I loved this program because the thesis of it was it's only a game. Football, basketball, soccer, hockey, whatever. It's only a game. That was the thesis of it. And so he would analyze sports and so forth, but with this standpoint, that the purpose of sports is to have a good time. And I remember reading about the difficulty of teaching sports to the Hopi in the schools on the Hopi reservation. They said that a football coach was trying to teach the Hopi kids that you have to win, you have to fight to win, and you have to take this seriously, and you have to fight to win. And the Hopi kids would play, have a good time, and they didn't care whether they won or lost. And the coach would say, no, you have to care. You have to care. You have to win. You have to play to win. That's the whole point, is to win. Well, the Hopi kids were much better karma yogis than the coach was, because they did it because they realized, we're having fun. Whether we win or whether we lose, we still had fun. We still had a good time. How much better that is for sports than this other attitude. So, karma yoga, everyday yoga. Who is fit for karma yoga? Anyone and everyone who wants to grow spiritually. The only requirement for being a karma yogi is that you want to practice it. There are no high requirements that only people who have attained to this level of concentration and so forth can practice it. Like for Raja Yoga, there are many qualifications. For Jnana Yoga also there are qualifications. Even for Bhakti Yoga, you have to fulfill qualifications. But for Karma Yoga, you just have to want to elevate yourself through action. You want to act in such a way that your life becomes more noble. Your life is ennobled. That you want to rise above the slavery of action. So in Karma Yoga, you recognize that action as it's normally done just gets us further and further involved in problems. You go to do something and you find pretty soon that doing one thing has involved you in other things. And then that involves you in other things, and that involves you in other things. And so work has a way of involving us in a way that we find ourselves more and more tied down by a responsibility, tied down by work. And so anyone who recognizes the need of everyone to be active all of the time, as I said, even sitting on the couch is an action, watching television is an action, taking a Sunday afternoon nap is an action. So recognizing that I'm active all of the time, whether I want to be or not, but recognizing that the tendency of action is to involve me in slavery, but I want to be free. I want to act in such a way that I'm free in the midst of action. And so that's the basic motivation for Karma Yoga. The goal of Karma Yoga is freedom. Again, freedom, what kind of freedom? What is the freedom of Karma Yoga? That is, we find that life in the world, and we don't know any other kind of life. There's not a life in the world as opposed to some other kind of life. No, life in the world is life. That's where we are. Excuse me. And so we find that the waves of action and reaction in the world are always assaulting us. We want to do something, or we want to do something good. We want to help somebody. We want to do something for them to help them. And then we find that the person begins to expect our help. And well, I had some time, I wanted to help them, now they expect it, and they get angry if I don't go ahead and help them again. Or I help them and then they act as if that's my duty to help them. I have to help them. And instead of being thankful or grateful, they begin to expect my help. And so we find that we're driving down the road and somebody cuts us off and we get angry. And we accidentally cut somebody off, hopefully accidentally. cut somebody off, and then they're angry at us. And so we're constantly finding these actions and reactions. We're at work and we say something, we think we're saying something innocently, and somebody else takes it wrong and they get upset with us. And so in life we find that we're constantly getting hit by waves of action and reaction. We're acting and then we're getting reactions. Other people are acting and then we're reacting. And so life is full of action and reaction. That's why in the symbol of the order, which Swami Vivekananda designed for the order, the serpent circling the wavy waters and the lotus and the sun and the swan, etc., that the wavy waters represent karma, because karma is the field of action and reaction. For every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So everything that we do, it brings a reaction, both within ourselves, a mental reaction, an emotional reaction, and a reaction outside as well. So in Karma Yoga, we learn how to keep the mind free in the midst of action. How to keep the mind free. Like any yoga, that's a lifelong task. It's not that you hear a lecture and then you can do it. No. It's a lifelong task learning to do it. But by trying to do it, we find that our life becomes better. Our life becomes better. The quality of our mind becomes better. One of the things to learn in Karma Yoga, and one of the things that thankfully comes just with age, if we allow it to happen with age, is you realize with age so many things, they just don't matter. Who cares? It just doesn't matter, just doesn't matter. When you're younger, you think everything matters. But as you get older, you think, oh, now I don't have the energy and the strength to make everything matter, so just let it go, let it go. So somebody cuts you off on the freeway. If when you're young you can learn to do that, then you're a yogi. If you learn to do it consciously, someone cuts you off on the freeway, okay, they cut me off. What can I do? Am I going to ram them with my car? Am I going to drive them off of the road? Am I going to pull out a revolver and shoot them? What am I going to do? No, I can't do anything. They cut me off. So that's their problem. I make it my problem when I react. I make it my problem when I react. If I just say, okay, let it go, doesn't matter. A great devotee who met Swami Vivekananda when she was a little girl at Ridgely Manor. Her spiritual name was Prasanna, but her birth name was Catherine Whitmarsh. Her nephew is the president of our society in Hollywood, the Vedanta Society in Hollywood. I became very close to her in her old age, and she had been very close to Josephine MacLeod, the great devotee of Swami Vivekananda. She was a relative of Josephine MacLeod and was very close to her, and used to follow her around like a puppy. And everywhere Josephine went, she wanted to follow along. And so she said, Josephine MacLeod was a great soul. She lived in the state of a Paramahamsa, lived in the state of enlightenment, as Swamiji himself said about her. And so in her later life, her outer life was peculiar. She would dress in a peculiar way. She would sometimes act in a peculiar way. And so people who didn't know her would often insult her, say insulting things, or make smirks, or laugh at her, or whatever. And so Prasanna, this Catherine Whitmarsh, told me that Josephine MacLeod would always tell her when she would get upset that somebody is making fun of my aunt whom I revere so highly. She says, doesn't matter, let it go. She always that idea of letting it go. And so karma yoga means freedom even higher than that. That's a beginning towards that freedom, just letting things go. But in the midst of action, keeping the mind and the consciousness completely free, completely clear, completely free. Not being attached, not working for success or failure. That doesn't mean that you try to fail, and doesn't mean that you don't try to do things well. No, the karma yoga depends on respect for action. Respect for action. And respect for action means that you try to do your best in everything. But whether you're successful or whether you're not successful, that's not the point. That's not the point. In the midst of success and failure, keeping the mind equal. And I explain a great lesson I learned on that towards the end of the talk today. So the goal is freedom, but we need a graduated approach in order to come to the heights of karma yoga. And so I'll come back to freedom later, but we need a graduated approach. So one of the first things to recognize in karma yoga is just the necessity of action. How we can't do without action. How everything that we do is action. Thinking is action. Meditating is action. Sitting quietly and just daydreaming, that's action. Everything is action. The world is a world of action. The body is constantly active. The mind is constantly active. And so action is natural and constant. And so any action, mental or physical, is the field for karma yoga. So recognizing the necessity of action, the universality of action, and that karma yoga is learning how to do whatever I do in a way that leads me higher spiritually, that ennobles my life, makes my life better, makes my mind better, my heart better. So the necessity of action, but normally in action we need a why. Why should I do this? Why should I do this? And that's where this karmanyevadhikara stays. Yours is the right to the work alone, not to the fruits of action. Why that's so difficult? Because we work for a reason. If you go to work and at the end of the week the boss gives you your paycheck and you say, no, I wasn't here for the fruits of my action, I was here just for the work itself. Well, the boss will be delighted. He may think that you're crazy, but as long as he can get work out of you, he'll be delighted without having to pay you. But no, that's not the idea. The idea is not to forego your paycheck or whatever it is. It's not being attached to the fruits of action. And so normally we need a reason to work, to do anything. I sit on the couch on Sunday afternoon because I'm tired. I want to rest, so that's my reason. I go to work because I need to work in order to support my family. Or as the old bumper sticker says, which you don't see as much anymore, I owe, so off to work I go. From the old Seven Dwarfs, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, hi-ho, it's off to work I go. So I owe is W-E, I owe, so off to work I go. So many people work just because they have to make money. There was another bumper sticker I used to see in California. California used to be the land of bumper stickers. You'd see them everywhere. In fact, I had a friend whose whole pickup truck was wallpapered with bumper stickers. So one of them was, the worst day fishing is better than the best day working. And so that's the common idea of work. Work is something, meaning work for remuneration. It's something I have to do because I need money in order to live. And so I go through the slavery of working so that I can get money, so that I can have a good time. No, that's a very low idea of work. We have to have a higher idea of work. We have to recognize the universality of work and recognize that all work is holy. All work is good work. All work is a means to liberation. All work is a means to salvation. All work is good. Any work is good. Then we can learn to act in such a way that all work ennobles us. So again, in the beginning we need a why. Why should I work? And the idea that, well, let me work because by working in the proper way I will come to spiritual freedom, that itself is too elevated for most people to hold on to. And so a graduated step to approach to work is to work for duty's sake. I have responsibilities. I have people that I'm responsible for. I have family members I'm responsible for. I may have friends that I have taken responsibility for helping them. I'm responsible to society, etc. And so a field of responsibility that I have. So working for responsibility, to fulfill my duty. A higher thing than just the bare sense of duty is to work out of a sense of dharma. Dharma means righteousness. Dharma means the sense of that which is right and proper. So a spiritual person acts because this is the proper thing for me to do right now. There's a song in Gujarati. I don't know Gujarati, and so I don't know the song in Gujarati, but it was by a great Gujarati saint, Narasimha Mehta. And in this song, he says that the good man, meaning the spiritual person, never thinks I have done something good. Now, many people hearing that will think, oh yeah, because they're humble and think, oh, I'm not worth anything. No, that's not what he means. He means that if I help somebody's in front of me, they need help, and I help them, the spiritual person doesn't think, oh, I'm such a good person that I helped so-and-so. No, the spiritual person would think, what else am I going to do? What else would I do? This person in front of me needs help. Am I not going to help them? That's impossible for me. That's impossible for me. So what Narasimha Mehta meant was that the good person, the spiritual person, the religious, genuinely religious person thinks that, no, I do what is there to be done. There's nothing else that I would do in that case. If there's something to be done that's in front of me that needs doing, then I do it. Not because I'm a good person and I think, oh, I'm so good, I did this. I helped this old lady across the street, I'm so good. No. But the thought that, what else would I do? What else would I do? I see someone who needs help crossing the street, and I'm there. I'm not going to help them? No, that's impossible. That's impossible. And so, a higher idea than just responsibility. Responsibility is good. You should never take a sense of responsibility from people if it's a good responsibility, a genuine responsibility, because that's good. People should be responsible. But a higher idea is to think, because this is the dharmic thing to do, this is the right thing to do. And if I'm in tune with, being in tune with dharma means I'm in tune with the nature of the universe. And my life becomes harmonious. My mind becomes harmonious. My life becomes harmonious. Swami Satprakashananda, as I've said here from this platform in Houston before, people would sometimes ask him, Maharaj, what happens after Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the highest state of abstraction, spiritual realization? He would say, don't worry about Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That's far away right now. Be a good person. Be a good husband or good wife, a good child to your parents, a good friend to your friends. Do your work well at work. Be a good citizen. Do the right things. Just by doing that, by being a good person, you'll find that the mind becomes calm. And you'll find that there's not that much to be had in the world. That hankering to go out and grab the world, to taste the world, to experience the world, to possess the world, that will become less, because as you just become a good person, you find that the mind becomes calm. It's the restlessness of mind that makes us think that there's something out there I've got to grab. I've got to grab everything. I've got to possess everything. I've got to make everything mine. As the mind becomes calm, because you're a good person, you find that there's not that much to be had. What do I need? What do I need to be happy? Is Bill Gates happy because of his billions? No. No. Is Warren Buffett happy because of his billions? No. No. Nobody's happy because of what they possess. If Warren Buffett is happy, it's because he's become a good person, and he's happy because of that, not because of his wealth. So when the heart becomes good, when the heart becomes generous, then you begin to feel that, no, there's not that much to be had. So first, you work because you have responsibility to fulfill, and you'll be a lesser person if you don't fulfill them. There was the case of Hazra, the famous Hazra in the Gospel of in the life of Sri Ramakrishna, mentioned in the Gospel of Ramakrishna many times. Hazra spent a long period at Dakshineshwar without going to take care of his wife and children in the faraway village. And they sent word to Dakshineshwar that Hazra is not paying attention to us. We don't have things to eat. We're suffering. And they came to Sri Ramakrishna, and he scolded Hazra severely. He said, "What? You have no shame? Who is going to feed your children if not you? You are the father of these children. You're not going to feed them. Don't you have any shame?" So he gave him that sense of shame, that here you think that, oh, you're sitting in Dakshineshwar meditating, and that also you're doing in front of everybody so that people will think you're a great saint. You're doing it for people's adulation, while you should be in your village taking care of your family. And so he gave him a sense of shame, scolded him. So a sense of responsibility first, but then a higher idea is the sense of dharma. Because this is the right thing to do, a sense of rightness about action. As you develop a sense of dharma, what in the West is called righteousness, in English called righteousness, a sense of dharma. But the Indian idea of dharma goes beyond the idea of righteousness, the English concept of righteousness. The idea of dharma is, again, that the universe is constructed in such a way that there's a rightness in every situation. In every situation, there's something that you should do. And so you do because it's there to be done. And because by doing the right thing, which is always the good thing, which is always the generous thing, which is always the helpful thing, then you become a better person. The quality of your life becomes better. And you become in harmony with the universe itself. So going there. And then another idea, the ancient Indian idea of yajna, of sacrifice. When I first joined in Chicago, under Swami Bhashyanandaji, whom some of you knew, he would sometimes talk in his classes or in his lectures to us. He would speak about the glory of sacrifice. The glory of sacrifice. And when he would speak of the glory of sacrifice, his face would light up, and he'd talk about this whole universe being a grand sacrifice. Well, of course, I'd grown up knowing about sacrifice, but I thought of sacrifice meaning that you have to put up with all sorts of difficulty and give up things that you really want because somebody else deserves it more than you do. And so sacrifice meant loss and deprivation and giving things to others because you don't really deserve anything yourself. So being a little kid and told to sacrifice your toys for somebody else, you think, well, I just got the toy. I want it for myself. And so the idea of sacrifice was associated with loss to me. But I learned from watching the Swami when he talked about sacrifice that there was this other idea of sacrifice. And later, as I studied more of Vedanta and studied more of the ancient Vedic ideal, I saw that the idea of sacrifice was associated with greatness, that the idea of sacrifice was associated with freedom, that being able to sacrifice ennobles you. It ennobles you, it lifts the mind. And so this whole universe is seen as a sacrifice from Vedic times. That the child has to sacrifice toys in order to grow. The child wants to play games all of the time, but they go to school and they have to do their homework. They have to do their studies. So they have to sacrifice play in order to study. You have to sacrifice the freedom of your educational life, where you're with all of your friends and you're studying and everything which you've learned to love. You have to sacrifice that in order to go into the work life. You have to sacrifice a lot in order to enter into marriage. Marriage is a grand sacrifice. Then when you have children, you have to sacrifice so much by having children also. So much you sacrifice for your children. So in everything there's this idea of sacrifice, giving up one thing for something higher. And so the whole universe is built on the principle of sacrifice. Every time I eat, it's a sacrifice, meaning any person. Every time I eat, it's a sacrifice. I'm sacrificing the lives of others for my own life, even if it's a carrot. It's the sacrifice of the life of the carrot for my own life. That life is based on life. And one day this body will die and it will become the food of, well, if it's cremated, it won't become the food of worms, but if it were buried, it would become the food of worms. And if it's cremated, then it'll add some phosphorus and hopefully some nitrogen to plants that it's scattered on. So everything, life feeds on life. Everything is a sacrifice. Everything is a sacrifice. Everything is giving itself to something else. And then that thing is giving itself to something else. And so seeing the greatness of sacrifice. So a higher definition of, a higher thing of work. So one is responsibility. Another thing is the sense of dharma. Another thing is the sense of yajna, the sense of sacrifice. Well, let me say one more word about that. That you find that everybody feels that everybody has the need to feel useful. Everybody has the need to feel useful. The worst thing in life is to feel that you're of no use to anybody. That's one of the great problems in old age when people don't have family around or whatever. The problem of feeling useless. That I'm old, I can't do anything, I'm useless. Now people are taking care of me, I can't do anything. So the greatest service to an elderly person is to make them feel useful, to let them know that they are useful. Because they are useful, but to let them know that they're useful. Allow them to be useful. That's a great thing, a great service to any older person, to allow them to be useful. Because everybody has the need to feel useful. If you don't feel useless, if you don't feel useful, you feel useless, and your life becomes hopeless. And so that also is a part of yajna, part of the great sacrifice of life, that everyone has to feel that they are serving some purpose. Some purpose. But a higher idea of work is given by Swamiji in the beginning of Karma Yoga, his book on Karma Yoga. He defines karma this way: every mental and physical blow that is given to the soul, by which, as it were, fire is struck from the soul, and by which its own power and knowledge are discovered, is karma. This word being used in its widest sense, that is work. This word being used in its widest sense. So every mental and physical blow that is given to the soul, by which, as it were, fire is struck from the soul, like flint, like striking a flint. So every mental and physical action that strikes fire from the soul, that is work. So recognizing that every mental and physical action has the ability to strike fire from the soul, to awaken the soul, to bring out the glory of the soul. So that's work has that power. Action has the power to awaken the soul. All action, physical and mental. And if we see that ability, that capacity in work, then every action we will see as having the capacity to bring out the greatness of the soul, the nobility of the soul, the light and knowledge of the soul. So that's the basis of a higher karma yoga, recognizing that every action, mental and physical, has that power to bring out the glory of the soul. So what is work? From this standpoint, we see that all action is experimentation with reality. All action is experimentation with reality. What does the baby do when it's born into this world? First it's born, as soon as it's able to focus its eyes, it looks in wonder at all of this. What is this? What is this? Who are these people? Of course, it doesn't even know who a person is yet. It just sees a mass of sensations and looks in wonder at this mass of sensations. Everything is new. Everything elicits wonder from the baby, and so the baby is ready to experiment with reality. And everything that the baby finds at the beginning, it wants to put in its mouth. That's where it experiments with everything. Its fingers, its thumb, toys go in the mouth. Eventually its foot goes into its mouth, and then we spend the rest of our lives trying to take our foot out of our mouth. Everything the baby puts in its mouth, well, why? Because it's experiencing reality. It's experimenting with reality. It's finding out where its body is and where the environment is. It's finding out what the environment is. Children at play. What are they doing when children are playing? They're learning skills. They're experimenting with reality. The difference between play and work is that work comes with a sense of necessity, a sense that I have to do it, and therefore Swami Vivekananda said that duty is the midday summer sun which scorches the life of man. Now again, the sense of duty, the sense of responsibility is good, but there's a higher attitude where we get rid of the sense of duty. We don't do things because it's duty. Duty means that I have to do this. There's a sense of necessity. And so the difference between a child and an adult when they do something is a child does everything as play. An adult turns even play into work. A child turns even work into play, and an adult turns even play into work. That is a sense of necessity. We have to do this. I remember someone very close to me that when he would go on vacation, he'd walk into a house that he had rented for his family for a week's vacation. He'd walk into the house and say, "Oh my God, in a week's time we're going to have such a time cleaning this place up. Oh my." You just got there on vacation. And you're already thinking about how hard it's going to be in a week's time to clean everything up. So a child turns everything into play, and an adult turns everything into work. So the difference is that the child knows that everything is just experimentation. Everything is fun because it's experimentation. You give a child a computer, and they begin to figure everything out because they're just having fun. The adult sits there and thinks, "Oh my God, I'm going to break something if I touch it in the wrong way. If I do the wrong thing, it's going to break, and then I'm going to have to pay for it," and all of these ideas of responsibility and everything. So the karma yoga is the the yoga of experimenting with reality. So the yogis, there are different approaches. There's not time now to go over the different approaches that I'll do in another talk on karma yoga sometime. But let me just, I'll skip what I was going to say about that. But let me say that I said I would come back to Swami Vivekananda's unique contributions to karma yoga. There's not time to go over all of them or to go over them deeply, but let me say, mention an important point. That in the karma yoga of the Gita, Sri Krishna teaches surrendering the fruits of your action. That's the basis of his karma yoga. Non-attachment by surrendering the fruits of your action, whether through devotion or through the path of knowledge. But Swami Vivekananda taught that action itself is worship. So in the karma yoga of the Gita, you do your action and you give the fruits to God. But in Swamiji's karma yoga, your action itself is worship. You're not doing something, getting fruits, and then giving those to God. Your action itself is worship, direct worship. Swamiji said to see God in everything. He said, when you see a mother cat nursing her kittens, bow down and worship. For where there is love, there is God. He said, literally believe this. Literally believe this. Where there is love, there is God. And so Swamiji taught the worship of the Virat, the worship of the manifest divinity here in front of us. He said, where will you go to build temples and make images for worship when the living God is right here before you? He said that making temples and images to worship is like living on the bank of the Ganges and digging a well for water. The river of life is flowing right in front of you, and you ignore that, and you go make imaginary images of God, when the living images of God are here in front of you. So in Swamiji's karma yoga, direct service is direct worship of God. It's not doing work and then giving the fruits to God. No, it's worship itself. seeing all as the self. So the last thing, let me say, and I said earlier that this I would tell you also, the thing that helped me most in understanding karma yoga, a single thing that helped me the most was once when I was in San Diego, where I spent many years. Swami Nityaswarupananda, he was a disciple of the Holy Mother. He passed away back in the 1990s, mid-1990s. But he was a disciple of Holy Mother. He knew many of the direct disciples. He was very close to Swami Premananda and some others. Great Swami. He was the one who founded the Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture in Gold Park, Calcutta, which many of you know of. So he came on his last trip to America. He had spent time in America, never as head of a center, but he had spent some time here many years before and had come before. But on his last trip to America, he came to San Diego, and he arrived in San Diego on his 90th birthday. And he stayed with me for about 5 days, so I took care of him, and I'd take him out during the day to show him things, and he's a wonderful person to show things because he found everything fascinating. Like a child. Again, the child has that where everything is new, everything is bright. And I found a few spiritual people who are like that, who have that child's vision, where everything is new and everything is fascinating to them. And so he was like that. And so one day I had taken him out and brought him back. And when we got back to the center, it was a Tuesday morning, late morning we got back, and there was a devotee there who was cleaning the public parts of the ashram, the lecture hall and the kitchen and other parts, other than the monastery, which was upstairs in San Diego. And so when he came in, I saw this devotee, Antoinette. I said, Maharaj, this is Antoinette. She is one of our devotees who for many years comes every Tuesday and cleans the ashram as her worship. She can't come on Sundays or to classes because of family problems. So her participation in our society is just to come here every Tuesday and very devotedly clean the center. And so Swami Nityaswarupananda went up to her and said, oh, I'm so happy to meet you. I'm so happy to meet you. And so glad to hear about your service. But always remember, it's not what you do that's important. It's who you are becoming through the doing that's important. It's not what you do that's important. It's who you are becoming through the doing. And that really is the secret to karma yoga. In action, it's not what you do, it's not whether you succeed or you fail. It's who you're becoming through the action. And so when you're driving along and somebody cuts you off, you have a choice of getting angry and shouting and so forth, opening your window and shouting to the driver and trying to cut him off, etc. Or just saying, it doesn't matter, because you recognize that who is hurt if I allow him to make me angry? Who has become injured? I've injured myself. I've injured myself by allowing myself to become upset. So making that determination that, no, let me act with a view to what is the effect on me. That's not selfish, that's spiritual. Because you're talking about not the effect, meaning how much money do I get from my action. You're talking about what is the effect on my mind, my heart. Is it because that we can be responsible for. We can't be responsible for the rest of the world. Even if you want to, you can't do it, because the world acts in the way the world acts. It's not under your control, but you have control of your own mind and control of your own heart. And so that's where karma yoga is practiced. So karma yoga is the yoga of action, but really it also, like all of the other yogas, is an internal process. Karma yoga is practiced here, not out there. It's in the midst of action that you practice karma yoga, but where you practice it is right here, within your mind and heart. Within the mind and heart, that's where you practice karma yoga. So you do what you do, thinking, who am I becoming through this action? So let me act in such a way, let me see to it that I act in such a way that I become a better person through everything that I do. So, and that is the path of everyday yoga. So I'll stop here for today. And first let me see if there are any questions, then I'll give announcements, and then we'll have Arati. Yes, Rinku. Oh, is there a micro? Oh, you got the microphone.
Maharaj, how do you detach yourself from the expectation that you have? What are the steps you can do to detach yourself?
You mean from your own expectations of yourself?
Right. I mean, it's you relieve the fruit of action. So how do you detach yourself? Basically, you have to make yourself detached. So how do you do that?
Yes. Well, there's several ways, and that was one of the things, that was the main thing that I left out. Other things I covered and what I wanted to cover today, but that was one thing that I was going to talk about that I didn't get to. So there are different ways. One is by trying to surrender to God. But I would say that the central thing, in order to make a succinct answer, instead of going through all the different attitudes of karma yoga and how each one would apply to your question, the central thing is to focus on, to realize, first of all, that that I'm always active. Whether I think I'm active or not, even if I'm sitting on the sofa, I'm still active. I'm always active. So let me act in a way that makes me a better person, because that's the only value. That's the only thing I will take with me when I go, is who I am, who I've become. And so let me focus on that. And then you'll begin to see as you do that, that even in failure, even you try to do something and it fails, even there we learn a great deal. In fact, when I was in San Diego at one point, I started doing on my own. I started doing a service project in Tijuana, across the border from San Diego. I would go down and help with poor schools where they didn't have supplies and the government couldn't even build buildings for them. Some of them would meet under trees and so forth. Just neighborhood people. If somebody knew something, they would teach the local children. So I started going down, taking supplies and helping out. But I didn't know Spanish, and so I always had to take a translator with me. So I was 43 when I decided, when I was doing this, and I decided, I've got to learn Spanish. I like languages anyway, so I'll go to school and learn Spanish. So I started learning Spanish. So all of that is to say that I hadn't been in school for decades, but when I went back to school, I studied. I'd always been a good student and studied hard, and so now I applied myself also and studied very hard. But I found something interesting. When I got a perfect score on a test, which I sometimes did, then I didn't remember anything of it afterwards, except for the fact that I got a 100 on the test out of 100 points. When I made mistakes on the test, I remembered, it's not that, it's this. And it made an impression. I learned much more from my mistakes than I did from my success. And so that's true in general in life, that our greatest teachers are often our failures. And so if we know that and we internalize that idea, then our failures also become teachers. Failure no longer is failure. Everything, success, failure, and everything in between, is just another experience. And the value of life is experience, not success or failure, not even happiness or misery. Swami Swahananda used to say, I quoted him just the other day, the same thing. He used to say that when you're happy and everything's going well, you don't have to think about it. I'm just happy. When you're miserable, you think, why am I so miserable? Then you become reflective. You don't ever think, why am I so happy? Why am I so happy? We learn a great deal from the difficulties in life. And so if we know that, then we accept both the good times and the bad times and recognize that both have been my teachers. Both are blessings to me. So, any last question? Yes, Deepak. And the leg.
Does every person in his or her know
it was working.
Anyway, I asked.
Yes.
Does every person in his or her mind and heart know whether he or she is a good person or not?
Does everyone know if they're a good person or not? No, because we have many. We don't usually, unless we've worked on ourselves a lot, we don't have a clear estimation of ourselves. We think of ourselves in the terms that we've learned from society. If people smile at me, I think that I'm a good person. If people frown at me, I think I'm not a good person. If people tell me I'm smart, I think I'm smart. If people tell me I'm stupid, I think that I'm stupid. We have internalized so many things from other people. Then we have internalized things from culture and from religion. For instance, the idea that you're a sinner. No matter how good you may think you are, you're a sinner. Once I heard a evangelical preacher saying that, oh, people say, look at the innocent baby. That's not an innocent baby. It just hasn't learned how to sin yet. So you can't even look at a baby as innocent. So we internalize those things. And so one of the things in spiritual life we have to do, and usually it happens indirectly, but it does have to happen, is that we begin to see ourselves just for what we are, and we accept ourselves as our raw material. And then we don't even think in terms of am I good or am I bad, just I am who I am, and this is the raw material that will become Brahman. Because my true nature is spiritual, and this is what I have to work with, and that is what is going to become Brahman. And so even the question of am I a good person or a bad person, that after a while that begins to lessen until it disappears. But our sense of being a good or bad person is often overlaid with so many things that we've absorbed from outside. Oh, okay. So now time is up. Hector, is yours a short question? Can you make it short? Okay, make it short.
Once you're lucky enough to know that karma is something you'll accumulate after a while, once you know karma, you have to pay karma back, and you know you have to pay it back, you don't feel as bad when something bad happens to you. Do you lose value in repaying that? In other words, for like taxes, back taxes. If you know you have to pay your taxes, it hurts. But if you know you have to pay them, no matter what, it hurts less.
Yes.
How do I say that? Now that I know about karma, bad things that happen to me doesn't hurt me that much.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Does that how do I erase that karma?
Well, eventually that,
Hurt more.
eventually even that sense of hurting will go away. And when bad things happen to you, one of the values of internalizing the idea of karma in a correct way, any idea can be perverted and any idea can be taken the wrong way, but a correct understanding of karma is that you begin to see that karma means that you are constantly that your situation in life is a creative, ongoing project. That you have created your circumstances and you are creating them now. And so by the proper response to the experiences that are coming to you, you're making for your own spiritual growth. And so then you find that whatever comes to me, good and bad, that you find you don't even think, well, I must have done something really bad in my past to have this experience now. That doesn't even come to you. You just think, okay, now this has come, how do I deal with it? Because in every experience that comes to me, there's a strange law, universal law, that everything that comes to me is designed for my benefit if I take it in the right way. That there's something to be learned in everything. That karma is not primarily about reward and punishment. That element is certainly there, but primarily karma is about the situations that come to me, the experiences that come to me, are coming to me for a reason. And a reason appropriate to me. There's something in this experience that I need, and if I'm open to it, I can benefit from every experience, good and bad. And so then the painful things in life, you begin to take them in stride. So I'll close here. Let me give announcements, then a closing chant, and then arati for those who can stay. The Om Dyo Shanti Antariksham Shanti Prithvi Shanti Apa Shanti Oshadaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishwe Deva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Sama Shantiredhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace is in the heavens, peace is in the sky, peace is on earth, peace is in the waters, peace in the plants and the trees. The gods are peace. Peace is the nature of truth. All is peace. Peace alone, peace. May that peace, real peace, be with us all. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all the beings of the universe.